The morning rush at Harborview Diner always smelled like burnt coffee and old dreams, the kind of place where time didn't move. It just sighed. Maya Cole wiped down the counter for the third time, her hands smelling of lemon cleaner and exhaustion. She'd been here since 6 a.m., running on 2 hours of sleep and a prayer that her tips would cover her dad's medicine. "Hey, Maya," called Tina the cook, flipping pancakes like a magician who'd lost her will to perform. "You forget how to smile again?" Maya forced one. "Guess I'm out of stock today." "Then fake it," Tina said. "These people tip better when they think you're happy." The bell over the door jingled. A man walked in, mid-40s maybe, in worn clothes that didn't match his posture. His coat was clean but old, his boots dusty, his face weathered like someone who'd seen too many winters and stopped counting. He carried a small notebook and a cheap pen. He sat in the corner booth by the window, the one that looked out at the foggy harbor. He didn't order right away, just stared at the water like he was trying to remember something important. Maya walked over with her notepad. "Morning, sir. Coffee?" He looked up, his eyes kind but distant. "Please. Black." She poured his cup and left him alone. 10 minutes later, when she came back, his mug was empty, the check was folded under it, and there was a piece of paper torn from his notebook. Just 5 words. "Keep believing. You matter, too." Maya frowned, looking around. The man was gone. Only the note remained. Weird, she thought. Probably nothing. She stuffed it into her apron pocket and got back to work. By closing time, her feet ached, her apron was covered in grease, and the note had somehow made its way into her locker mirror, tucked under a photo of her and her dad. She wasn't sure why she'd done that. Maybe because nobody had said anything kind to her in a long time. The next morning, the man came back. Same booth, same quiet presence. "Coffee again?" Maya asked. He nodded, offering a small smile. "Please." When he left, another note was waiting. "Storms end. Sunlight's patient." Day 3, "You're stronger than you think." Day 4, "Someone's proud of you." The messages were simple, but they felt like medicine for a wound she didn't know how to heal. After a week, Tina teased her. "You got yourself a secret admirer, huh?" Maya laughed it off. "If he's admiring anything, it's the pie." But when she got home that night, she took the notes from her apron and placed them neatly in a tin box under her bed. Her dad's cough echoed down the hallway. She peeked into his room. He was asleep, the TV still flickering with static. She whispered, "One more shift, Dad. I'll get the rent together." Later, she sat on the edge of her bed, reading the notes again. The handwriting was steady, elegant. Not what she'd expect from a drifter. There was something intentional in it. Personal. The next morning, she looked for him. But his booth was empty. Instead, there was a new note folded under the sugar jar. It read, "Some gifts aren't meant tall to be seen, only felt." She stared at it, chills running down her spine, because at the bottom, scribbled faintly in pencil, was something new. Her name. Maya. And he wasn't supposed to know that. The next morning, the diner smelled like rain and bacon grease. Maya's hair was pulled back, her eyes tired but alert. She'd barely slept, still thinking about that last note, the one that somehow had her name on it. As she tied her apron, Tina raised an eyebrow. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Maybe I did," Maya muttered. The bell jingled. He was back. The stranger. Same booth. Same quiet calm that seemed to bend the air around him. "Morning," Maya said, forcing her voice steady. He looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. His gaze was steady. Warm, but unreadable. "Morning, Maya." She froze. "How do you know my name?" He smiled faintly. "It's on your name tag." She glanced down. "Right." The name tag. She felt stupid. "Right, coffee?" "Please," he said. "And maybe the apple pie." "You make it here?" She chuckled. "If by make it here You mean we thaw it and pretend we baked it? Yeah, it's ours. That earned her a laugh. His laugh wasn't loud. It was quiet, controlled. But it carried something warm through the room. When she brought his pie, he was writing in that little notebook again. He looked like a man who spent his life observing everything and saying very little. "What do you write about?" she asked before she could stop herself. He hesitated, then said, "People. Things I wish I'd said to them." "Like what?" He glanced up at her, the ghost of a smile on his lips. "Like you're doing better than you think." Her breath caught. "You're the one leaving the notes." He didn't deny it. He just kept writing. Maya crossed her arms. "Why? Is this some kind of game?" He shook his head. "No game, just something I do." "That's not an answer." He tore a page from his notebook, folded it once, and slid it across the table. "Then here's an answer." She unfolded it slowly. It read, "Because sometimes the smallest words can keep someone alive another day." She looked up, but he was already standing. He dropped cash on the table, far too much for coffee and pie, and left without another word. The bell over the door jingled softly, then silence. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him. His calm, his eyes, the way he'd said her name. Her father noticed her quiet mood as she reheated soup. "Rough day?" he asked, his voice frail but kind. "Not really. Just strange." He smiled weakly. "Strange is good. Means something's happening." After he went to bed, she took out the folded page again. The words seemed to glow in the dim light. She read them until she fell asleep, sitting up. The next morning, she woke late, heart pounding from a dream she couldn't quite remember. She rushed to the diner, rain still clinging to her jacket. The corner booth was empty. No man, no notes. But on the counter, taped to the coffee machine, was a napkin with familiar handwriting. "You look for storms, but sometimes it's the calm that saves you." Tina spotted it first. "Your mystery poet's back," she teased. Maya tried to smile, but unease crept into her chest, because under that napkin, tucked neatly beneath the tape, was a $20 bill and a single white card embossed with a gold crest. She turned it over. There was no name, just a symbol, a single letter, engraved in gold foil. A. And whoever he was, he wanted her to find it. The gold letter A burned in Maya's mind for days. She'd tucked the card into her apron pocket, meaning to throw it away. But she couldn't. Every time she reached for her tips, she felt it there, like a heartbeat. Whoever he wasn't just some lonely old man scribbling poetry on napkins. There was purpose in what he wrote, in how he watched. The diner quieted after the breakfast rush. Maya poured herself coffee and stared out the window at the mist rolling over the harbor. Her co-worker, Tina, leaned on the counter beside her. "So what's the deal with your mystery man?" Maya shrugged. "No deal. Just a customer who leaves more paper than tips." "Uh-huh," Tina said, smirking. "And that smile says you're curious." Maya rolled her eyes. "He's harmless. Just odd." But the truth was, she wasn't sure. That night, when she got home, her dad was awake on the couch, his old corduroy robe wrapped tight around his frail body. He looked up from the crossword. "Hey, kiddo. How was work?" "Fine," she said, dropping her bag. "Slow." He smiled. "You got that look, the one your mom used to get with when she was keeping something to herself." Maya froze. "What look?" "That one," he said, pointing at her. "The one that means something's about to change." She laughed it off. "You need your meds, old man." He chuckled. "Already took 'em. Now spill it." She hesitated, then pulled the folded napkin from her pocket. "There's this guy who comes into the diner. He leaves notes. Nice ones. Kinda personal." Her dad studied her face. "And how does that make you feel?" "Like I'm in a Hallmark movie I didn't audition for," she said with a dry laugh. Then softer. but also like someone actually sees me. He nodded slowly. People forget kindness doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes quiet saves more lives than shouting ever did. Maya smiled faintly, sitting beside him. She read one of the notes aloud. You look for storms, but sometimes it's the calm that saves you. Her dad closed his eyes, whispering, "That's beautiful." Later that night, she started a ritual. She placed every note she'd ever found into a small metal tin box, an old cookie tin her mother once kept sewing needles in. The notes fit perfectly, folded like prayers. She called it her diary of invisible kindness. Every night before bed, she'd read one, just to remember that good things still existed. On the 7th day, the stranger returned. He looked different, tired maybe, or weighed down. He sat in his usual booth, ordered coffee, and stared out the window. Maya approached, notebook in hand. "Rough morning?" He looked up, the corner of his mouth twitching. "Every morning's rough until coffee shows up." She smiled. "Then I'm basically your doctor." He chuckled quietly. "You'd make a better one than most." As she poured his refill, she noticed something sticking out from under his sleeve. A watch, gold, expensive. Definitely not something a man living off diner coffee should own. Before she could ask, he slid a folded page toward her. "For your collection," he said softly. "My what?" He nodded at her apron pocket. "You keep them all, don't you?" Maya's breath caught. "How do you know that?" "Because people don't throw away hope," he said, finishing his coffee. Then he stood, left cash on the table, and walked out into the grey drizzle. She unfolded the note. It read, "You don't have to understand kindness to deserve it." For the first time in years, Maya cried, not because she was sad, but because someone had written words she didn't know she needed. And outside, the man watched through the rain, a single gold crest glinting on the hood of the car that picked him up. The storm rolled in without warning. By 5 o'clock, the sky over the harbor had turned the color of bruised steel. Wind slammed against the diner windows, making the neon sign flicker like a heartbeat. Maya was closing alone that night. Tina had gone home early to beat the rain, and the last customer had left half an hour ago. She moved through the empty booths, wiping crumbs off the tables, humming quietly to drown out the thunder. The door rattled in its frame as another gust hit. "Great," she muttered. "Just what I needed. A hurricane and a power outage." She flipped the open sign to closed and grabbed her jacket. The streets outside were nearly deserted, rain hammering the pavement so hard it bounced. Lightning flashed over the water, and for a second, the entire harbor glowed silver. She pulled her hood up and ran for the bus stop. Halfway there, her sneaker slipped on a puddle. She hit the ground hard, her knee scraping against the wet asphalt. Pain shot up her leg, and she hissed through her teeth. A voice came through the rain. "Hey, you okay?" Maya looked up. The stranger was running toward her, umbrella in hand, his coat plastered to his body from the storm. It was him, the man from the diner. She blinked rain from her eyes. "You again?" He crouched beside her, offering his hand. "You've got terrible timing, you know that." She hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was steady, warm despite the cold. He helped her to her feet, holding the umbrella over both of them. "You shouldn't be out in this weather," he said. "Neither should you," she shot back. "You stalking me or something?" He smiled faintly. "You make it sound worse than it is. I was just nearby." "Near the diner? In a storm?" "Right," she said, shivering. "That makes total sense. Maybe I was checking to make sure you got home safe." "Why?" He hesitated, eyes flicking away. "Because kindness isn't supposed to end when the coffee does." She didn't know what to say to that. They stood there in the downpour, thunder rolling above them, sharing one too small umbrella. When lightning struck again, it illuminated his face, calm, serious, with water streaming down his cheeks. For the first time, she noticed the faint scar near his temple, the kind that looked like it had a story behind it. "You're bleeding," he said suddenly. "It's fine," she murmured, looking at her scraped knee. He shook his head. "Hold still." He took a handkerchief, an actual white, monogrammed handkerchief, from his pocket and wrapped it around her leg. His initials were embroidered in gold thread. A.S. She frowned. "You carry fancy handkerchiefs now? That's not exactly diner regular behavior." He smiled, half amused, half sad. "Guess I'm full of surprises." A car horn blared from the end of the street. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb, its headlights cutting through the rain. The driver stepped out, holding an umbrella. "Oh, sir," the man called. "We're late." Maya blinked. "Sir," she repeated. But the stranger was already stepping back, his expression unreadable. "You should get home, Maya. The storm's getting worse." She took a step forward. "Wait. Who are you, really?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Someone who owes your family more than you'll ever know." Before she could ask what that meant, he was gone, disappearing into the sedan. The car sped off, taillights glowing red in the rain. Maya stood in the downpour, her pulse pounding, clutching the soaked handkerchief in her hand. In gold stitching, beneath the initials, were two words she hadn't noticed before. Sterling & Co. And she realized the man she'd thought was a drifter might be someone powerful enough to buy the entire town. The rain didn't stop for 2 days. The harbor disappeared under a grey curtain, and the whole town felt like it was holding its breath. Maya couldn't shake the image of that black sedan, of the man she'd thought was just a kind stranger disappearing like smoke. She still had his handkerchief. She'd washed it, folded it, and placed it in the tin box with the notes. Sterling & Co. The name sounded familiar, maybe from a news headline, or a logo on one of those luxury magazines she used to flip through at the salon while waiting for her shift to start. On Thursday morning, the diner was half empty. Maya poured coffee for the regulars and tried to ignore the ache in her knee. When the bell over the door jingled, she looked up out of habit and froze. He was back. No umbrella this time, no fancy car, just him, in his worn jacket, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "Morning," he said. Her heart skipped. "You have some nerve showing up here after whatever that was the other night." He nodded. "I deserve that. But I owe you an apology." "For lying?" He paused. "For hiding." Maya crossed her arms. "You didn't exactly seem like the hiding type. You showed up with a chauffeur." He winced slightly, as if the word stung. "That wasn't supposed to happen. You weren't supposed to see that." "Then maybe stop showing up where I work." He gave a small nod, accepting the hit. "Fair enough. 1 cup of coffee, then I'll leave you alone." She sighed, grabbed the pot and poured. "You got 5 minutes." As she turned to leave, something slipped from his jacket pocket. A photograph, old and slightly creased. It hit the floor face up. Maya bent down to pick it up, and froze. It was her mother. Younger, laughing in the sunlight, standing in front of the very same harbor where the diner sat. Her mother had been dead for 15 years, but there was no mistaking that smile. Maya's voice cracked. "Where did you get this?" The man's face drained of color. He reached out slowly. "That's not—" But she pulled it away. "No, seriously, where did you get this photo? This is my mom." He stood there, silent, rain dripping from his hair, eyes dark and conflicted. "Her name was Laura Cole, right?" Her stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" He exhaled, rubbing his temple. "Because she once saved my father's life." Maya stared, confusion flooding her chest. "What are you talking about?" 25 years ago, he said quietly. "Your mother worked at a hospital in Portland. My father was in a car accident on Highway 9. She was the first one on the scene. If she hadn't stopped that night, he would have died." Her throat tightened. "My mom never said anything about that." "She wouldn't have," he said softly. "She didn't want the attention, but he never forgot. After she passed, he asked me to find her family." Maya blinked through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "That was you leaving the notes?" He nodded. "At first, It started as a promise to my father. But then, his voice trailed off. But then what? He met her eyes. Then it became something I wanted to do for you. The room went quiet, except for the faint hum of the neon sign outside. Maya looked down at the photo again, her mother's laughter frozen in time, and back at him. You should have just told me. I wanted to, he whispered, but I didn't want to be another rich man who showed up pretending to help. I wanted you to know me before you knew. That part of me. Her pulse quickened. That part? He hesitated, then said, My name's Adrian Shaw. She blinked. As in Sterling & Co. Shaw? He gave a faint, almost guilty smile. Yeah, that one. And in that moment, Maya realized the man leaving her notes wasn't just kind. He was one of the most powerful men in the country. The morning after Adrian Shaw revealed who he was, the entire diner buzzed like a beehive that had just been kicked. News traveled faster in a small town than wildfire in dry grass, and by breakfast everyone had a theory. Tina leaned over the counter, whispering like she was narrating a crime show. So let me get this straight. You're telling me that guy, the one who tips with poems, is a billionaire? Maya sighed, pouring herself coffee she didn't really want. I didn't tell you that. Sweetheart, you didn't have to, Tina said. Half the town saw that black car outside the night of the storm. You think people around here miss a car worth more than our houses? A few regulars at the corner booth were already whispering. Maya caught snippets. Rich boy, slumming it. Must have done something shady. Probably trying to buy the place. She gritted her teeth. Let them talk. Tina smirked. You like him. I don't like him. You defend him. Maya rolled her eyes. I defend everyone. That wasn't true, and they both knew it. When Adrian walked in later that afternoon, the entire diner seemed to freeze. The usual chatter dimmed to murmurs. He looked out of place in the simple grey sweater he wore, but his calm confidence filled the room like static electricity. Maya met him halfway, holding the coffee pot like a shield. You shouldn't have come here. He smiled faintly. And miss your famous sarcasm? Not a chance. People are talking. They'll talk anyway. She crossed her arms. You realize how crazy this looks, right? Billionaire hides in small-town diner writing mystery notes to a waitress? He winced. When you say it like that, it sounds worse. She shook her head. What do you even want from me, Adrian? His expression softened. Nothing. I just wanted to make things right. By stalking me? He sighed. By knowing you. She started to respond, but stopped when she noticed the window. Outside, a group of reporters stood by the curb. 3 of them, cameras ready, snapping pictures through the glass. Her stomach dropped. You brought them here? No, he said quickly. I swear I didn't. But the flashbulbs went off again, and Tina shouted from behind the counter. Maya, you're on camera. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Get out, she whispered. Maya, go. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He turned and left through the back door, the cameras still clicking outside. That night, the diner's social media page exploded. Someone had posted a blurry photo of Maya pouring Adrian coffee, captioned, Billionaire Shaw spotted in disguise. Small-town waitress caught in secret romance. The comments were brutal. Gold digger, faker, scam. By morning, Maya's phone was full of messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Some were curious, others cruel. Her manager, nervous about the attention, pulled her aside. Take a few days off, Maya. Let this die down. She wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She walked home in the cold, the world feeling smaller than it had in years. At her apartment door, she found an envelope wedged in the frame. Her name was written in the same familiar handwriting. Inside was a single note. I never meant to hurt you. Some truths just can't stay hidden forever. No signature this time. Just those same initials pressed faintly in the corner. A.S. Maya stood in the hallway, the envelope trembling in her hand. anger, and something else, something like heartbreak, boiling inside her. And for the first time since her mother's death, she realized she wasn't sure who she could trust anymore. 3 days passed. The diner felt quieter without him, like someone had turned the volume down on the whole world. The corner booth where Adrian used to sit stayed empty, untouched, as if even the regulars knew not to claim it. Maya tried to go through the motions, pour coffee, wipe tables, smile. But everything felt mechanical. Every time the doorbell chimed, she caught herself glancing toward that booth. Every time the wind pushed against the windows, she half expected to see his reflection staring back. But Adrian Shaw didn't return. The reporters eventually stopped showing up. The gossip cooled. People moved on to the next scandal. Only Maya couldn't. Tina noticed. "You're cleaning that table again," she said, leaning on the counter. Maya froze, realizing she'd wiped the same spotless surface 3 times. "Guess I'm developing OCD." Tina studied her face. "You miss him?" "Don't start." "I'm serious. You look like someone waiting for a text that's never coming." Maya gave a dry laugh. "He's a billionaire, Tina. I'm a waitress. Whatever that was, it wasn't real." "Maybe," Tina said softly. "But he saw you." That night, after closing, Maya found something strange. An envelope had been slipped under the diner's front door. No return address. No stamp. Just her name, written in that familiar handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a cashier's check, $10,000, and a small note. "For the people who make mornings bearable." It wasn't signed, but she didn't need a signature. She stared at the check in disbelief. It wasn't for her. It was made out to Harborview Diner Staff Fund. The next morning, the manager nearly dropped his coffee when she handed it to him. "Who in the world would—" "I have no idea," Maya said quickly, cutting him off. But she did, and the realization twisted something inside her. He was still watching, still helping from a distance. The others celebrated, laughing about bonuses and new uniforms. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't generosity. It was goodbye. That night, she walked to the harbor. The water reflected the dim streetlights, rippling softly. Wind tugged at her hair, cold and sharp. She pulled her phone out and stared at his last message, the one that had come weeks ago. Sometimes kindness doesn't need a name. She whispered into the wind, "You don't get to just disappear, Adrian." The next morning, she made a decision. She found the envelope he'd left weeks ago, the one with the Sterling and Cobenson crest, and studied the faint address embossed on the back. It wasn't a company office. It was a private estate address on the outskirts of town, up in the hills overlooking the bay. Maya borrowed Tina's car and drove there that evening. The road wound through pine trees and ended at a set of massive wrought-iron gates. A faded sign hung crookedly, "Sterling Manor, private property." The place looked deserted, windows dark, the air thick with silence. Still, she got out of the car and pushed open the smaller gate. The gravel crunched under her shoes as she walked up the long path. The house loomed over her, grand but crumbling, its beauty fading like a memory that refused to die. "Maya," a voice called softly. She spun around, but no one was there. Only the wind and the echo of her name. She stepped closer to the front door. It was slightly ajar. Her heart pounded as she pushed it open. Dust floated through a beam of fading sunlight. Furniture was covered in white sheets, like ghosts frozen mid-motion. Then she saw it, on the mantel above a cold fireplace. A framed photograph of the diner, and standing in the background of that photo was her. And behind her, blurred but unmistakable, was Adrian Shaw, watching from the corner booth. The front door creaked open wider as Maya stepped inside, the echo bouncing through the massive foyer. The air smelled of dust and old cedar, the kind of scent that clung to places that used to matter. She stood there for a moment, soaking in the silence. Everything felt frozen. The grand staircase covered in a film of dust, a chandelier draped in cobwebs, paintings watching her with muted eyes. The house wasn't abandoned, not exactly. It felt paused. She called out, her voice trembling. "Hello? Adrian?" No answer. She moved deeper into the mansion. Her sneakers left faint prints on the dusty marble floor. A half-eaten apple sat on the kitchen counter. A coffee mug rested beside it, still faintly warm. Someone had been here recently. Maya's pulse quickened. She walked into what must have been a study. Dark oak walls, shelves lined with books, a massive window overlooking the ocean cliffs. The storm outside had calmed, but the sea below still churned violently, waves crashing against the rocks. On the desk lay a stack of papers. She hesitated, then picked one up. It was a checkbook, Sterling & Co. Min, printed at the top. Every check was made out to small charities around town. Animal shelters, food banks, hospital foundations. The last one made her throat tighten. Harborview Medical Center, Daniel Cole account. Her father's name. She whispered, "What are you doing, Adrian?" A sudden noise behind her, a faint creak of floorboards. She spun around. Nothing. Just the empty hallway stretching into darkness. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. "If you're trying to scare me, it's working," she said, forcing a shaky laugh. The beam of light caught something on the wall. Framed photographs. Dozens of them. Her breath caught. Every photo was of the diner. Customers laughing, staff working, the harbor in the background. And in almost every picture, there she was. Maya, caught mid-smile, mid-laugh, mid-motion. They weren't random snapshots. They were studied. Careful. Her stomach twisted. What the hell? Then she saw it. A photo taken from outside her apartment window. It showed her and her father eating dinner together. She stumbled back, panic clawing at her chest. "No, no, no!" Her flashlight flickered. A low voice came from behind her. "I can explain that." She whirled around, heart pounding. Adrian stood in the doorway, dressed in black, his expression unreadable. His hair was damp, as if he'd been walking in the mist. "You followed me," she said, her voice trembling between anger and disbelief. He took a slow step forward. "You weren't supposed to see this yet." "See what? Your collection of me?" He winced. "It's not like that." "Then what is it, Adrian? Because from where I'm standing, it looks insane." He rubbed the back of his neck, sighing. "Your mother, Laura, she saved my father's life. After he died, I tried to find her, to thank her. By the time I did, she was gone. I found you instead. So you watched me. I wanted to make sure you were okay," he said quietly. "Your father was struggling. You were working yourself to the bone. I didn't know how to approach you without it feeling wrong." "You think this isn't wrong?" she snapped, holding up the photo. "You think spying on me and leaving money like charity is normal?" His voice broke. "It wasn't charity. It was guilt." They stood there in the heavy silence, the sound of waves filling the gap between them. Maya lowered the photo slowly. "Then tell me the truth, Adrian. All of it." He met her eyes, the calm mask finally cracking. "If I do, you'll hate me," she whispered. "Try me." And as lightning flashed across the cliffs, Adrian Shaw began to tell her everything. The wind howled outside the mansion, rattling the tall windows like a warning. Adrian stood near the fire he'd just lit, the orange glow flickering across his face. For the first time, he looked his age, tired, remorseful, human. Maya sat across from him, her arms folded tight, the photo of her mother still in her hand. "Start talking," she said quietly. He nodded, staring into the flames. "My father, Richard Shaw, wasn't a good man. Brilliant, yes. Powerful, absolutely. But good? No. He built his empire by breaking people. When I was a teenager, he made me believe that's what strength was. Control." Maya's voice was sharp. "What does any of this have to do with my family?" Adrian exhaled slowly. "Everything. One night, when I was 21, my father was driving home from a party. He was drunk. He crashed his car off the highway. Your mother, Laura, was driving by. She pulled him out of the wreck before the car exploded. She called the ambulance, stayed with him until he was stable, and then she disappeared. Never asked for money, never took credit. Just gone. Maya blinked, trying to process. She never told us that. She wouldn't have, Adrian said softly. My father tried to find her, to pay her back. When he finally did, she refused the check. She said, "Some things aren't debts, they're chances to do better." He never forgot that. Maya's throat tightened. She remembered her mom saying something like that once, years ago. Adrian continued, his voice rough. When she died, I found out too late. I went to her funeral. I didn't speak to anyone. I couldn't. Your father was there. I recognized him from the photos my father had kept, but he looked broken. I sent help quietly. Medical donations, rent money, all under fake names. He always refused. She frowned. He never mentioned any of that. I know, Adrian said. He didn't want charity. So when I saw you at the diner that first night, I realized who you were. I saw her in you, your eyes, your kindness, and I thought, maybe this was my chance to do what my father never did, to make things right. Maya laughed bitterly. So you started leaving anonymous notes like some kind of emotional vigilante? He smiled sadly. Something like that. That's insane, she said, her voice cracking. You watched me. You wrote to me. You pretended to be someone else. I was trying to protect you, he interrupted gently. You don't know what it's like to have a last name that opens doors and locks cages at the same time. Everyone wants something from me. I didn't want to be that man with you. Her anger faltered for just a moment. Then what did you want? He met her gaze, steady and unguarded. To know who I was when I wasn't being him. Maya looked away, tears pricking her eyes. You could have just told me the truth. He nodded. I should have. But when I saw the life you were fighting for, the way you cared for your dad, how hard you worked, I knew that if I told you who I was, you'd never let me help. She stood, pacing, the storm outside mirroring the one in her chest. So what now, Adrian? You expect me to thank you? No, he said quietly. I expect you to hate me. But I needed you to know the truth. Maya stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, You're right. I do hate you. She turned and walked toward the door, her footsteps echoing through the empty hall. He didn't stop her, but just as she reached the threshold, he said, Your mother saved my father's life. Maybe one day I'll find a way to save yours. And behind her, the fire crackled, burning with all the words neither of them knew how to say. The drive home that night felt endless. The rain had turned to mist, curling around the trees like ghosts of unspoken truths. Maya's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. Every word Adrian had said kept replaying in her head. Her mother's kindness, her father's silence, the wreck on Highway 9. All those pieces she thought she understood didn't fit anymore. When she finally parked outside her apartment, the lights were still on inside. Her father was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of cold tea. His hands trembled slightly as he looked up. You've been crying, he said. Maya didn't bother to deny it. You knew, she whispered. He sighed. I figured it would come out eventually. You knew who he was, she demanded. You knew Adrian Shaw has been hanging around, writing notes, paying hospital bills, everything. And you said nothing? He rubbed his temples. I didn't want his money. I didn't want his name in our lives. I didn't want him to use your mother's memory to make himself feel like a hero. Her voice cracked. He said she saved his father. She did, Daniel said quietly. I was there that night. Your mom and I had gone out for dinner. We were driving home when we saw the crash. She didn't even hesitate. She just ran toward the fire. I yelled at her not to go, but she did anyway. Maya blinked back tears. That's who she was? Yeah, he said with a faint smile. That's who she was. Silence settled between them, heavy and fragile. Finally, Maya asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I didn't want you to grow up thinking the world owes you something. Your mom helped because it was right, not because she expected to be remembered for it." Maya sank into the chair across from him. "He's not like his father," she said softly. "At least I don't think he is." Daniel's eyes met hers, weary but sharp. "You don't know men like that, Maya. They're born into power, and they don't even realize the damage they cause trying to fix it." She shook her head. "You didn't see him, Dad. He wasn't pretending. He looked lost." Daniel leaned back, the chair creaking beneath him. "That's what guilt looks like. And guilt can be dangerous when it thinks it's love." Maya stared at him. "You think he's dangerous?" "I think he's human," he said. "And humans break things, especially the things they're trying to protect." She didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, the tin box of notes on her lap, the handkerchief folded neatly inside. Each note felt heavier now, like tiny bricks of truth built on a foundation of secrets. By dawn, she made a decision. The next day, she returned to the mansion. She found Adrian outside by the cliffs, standing in the fog, staring at the horizon. He didn't turn when she approached. "You were right," she said. He looked over his shoulder, surprised. "About what?" "About me hating you." She paused. "But hate isn't simple. It doesn't erase everything else." He studied her face. "Then why come back?" "Because you said my mother gave your father a second chance. Maybe I need to know what you'll do with yours." He smiled faintly, sadness flickering in his eyes. "I don't deserve one." "Maybe not," she said. "But that's the thing about second chances. They're never earned. They're given." The wind howled across the cliffs, carrying her words into the distance. Adrian nodded slowly, almost to himself. "Then I won't waste it." And as the first light of morning touched the water, the past, dark, broken, unfinished, finally began to stir toward something that looked like forgiveness. For a week, things went strangely quiet. Adrian stopped coming by the diner. No more notes, no mysterious envelopes. Just silence, the kind that stretched too long and started to hurt. Maya tried to focus on work, but her thoughts kept circling back to him, to everything he'd said on that cliff. Every plate she carried, every order she wrote down, felt heavier. She'd finally learned the truth, and yet she didn't know what to do with it. Her father's health was getting worse. The coughing fits came harder, his medication cost more, and every time she opened another hospital bill, she felt the walls closing in. One night, after she helped him back into bed, she found an envelope sitting on the kitchen table. Her name was written across it in the same familiar handwriting. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a short note. "Let me help him, Maya. Please. Don't let pride steal time you can't get back." Tucked behind the letter was a check, a blank one, signed. Maya's chest tightened. It wasn't the money, it was what it meant. If she accepted it, she'd be saying yes to his world, to the same kind of power her father had always warned her about. But if she didn't, she might lose the only family she had left. When she told her father, he refused instantly. "You're not taking that man's money. It's not about the money, Dad. It's about your treatment." He slammed his hand on the table, coughing. "I said no!" She flinched. "Why are you so damn stubborn?" "Because I've seen what happens when rich men start trying to buy forgiveness," he said, voice hoarse. "Your mother saved his father because it was the right thing to do, not because of what she could get from it." Tears filled her eyes. "And now I'm supposed to let you die for the same principle?" The words hung in the air like soot. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Daniel leaned back, exhausted. "You're your mother's daughter," he whispered. "You're going to do what you think is right, no matter what I say." She wiped her eyes. "You're damn right I am." The next morning, she called Adrian. He answered on the first ring. "Maya." "I'll meet you," she said quietly. "But this isn't a deal. It's a loan. I pay you back every cent." He hesitated. "If that's what makes you comfortable." "Good," she said. "Tomorrow, 8 o'clock. The diner." When he arrived, the place was closed, the lights low. Maya stood behind the counter with a folder of hospital paperwork. "You really meant it," he said softly. "I don't take charity," she replied. He smiled faintly. "Neither did your mother." She handed him the papers. "If you're going to help, do it properly. Pay the bills directly to the hospital. No blank checks. No surprises." Adrian nodded. "You have my word." She studied him for a moment. "Why are you doing this? What's in it for you?" He shook his head. "You still think everything has a price, doesn't it?" He looked down at the counter. "Not this time. I'm not buying anything, Maya. I'm trying to give back what my father took from the world." She stared at him, her anger softening just slightly. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I have to," he said quietly. "It's the only way I sleep at night." Maya exhaled, tired and wary. "Then start with my dad. Help him. And after that, we're done." Adrian gave a small nod. "Whatever you need." But as he walked out into the rain, Maya had a sinking feeling in her chest. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't the end between them. It was the beginning of something she didn't yet understand. The first hospital payment cleared 2 days later. Maya found out when the billing department called to thank her for the generous contribution. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't even cashed a check. Adrian had done it. She should have been relieved. Instead, she felt sick. That night, she drove straight to his office, an entire floor in the glass tower downtown with the name Sterling & Co. shining across the lobby like a brand of judgment. The receptionist recognized her immediately. "Ms. Cole, he's been expecting you." Maya's jaw tightened. "Of course he has." The elevator ride up was silent, except for her heartbeat. When the doors opened, Adrian was standing by the window, the city stretching out behind him in golden streaks of light. "You went behind my back," she said flatly. He turned, calm as ever. "I kept my promise. I told you to pay the hospital directly after we signed the agreement. You didn't even wait." He sighed. "Your father didn't have time to wait." Her voice cracked. "You had no right to make that decision for me." Adrian stepped closer. "Maya, he needed treatment now. The insurance wouldn't cover the new procedure. I just accelerated the process." "You mean you bought your way into our lives again?" He hesitated, guilt flickering across his face. "I'm trying to help." She glared at him. "You don't get it. You don't fix everything with money. You can't just write a check and make the guilt disappear." The words came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't take them back. He looked down, his voice quieter. "I don't expect forgiveness." "Then what do you expect?" He met her eyes. "For him to live." That broke something in her. Because buried under the anger was the simple truth. She wanted that, too. But before she could respond, his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Shaw, the board is waiting." Adrian's tone shifted, colder. "Tell them to start without me." She realized then how easily he moved between worlds. The billionaire who commanded boardrooms and the man who wrote anonymous notes on napkins. She turned to leave. "You don't get to play both sides, Adrian. You can't be the hero and the ghost." "Maya," she cut him off. "You don't get to decide what we need. You don't know what it's like to scrape change to keep the lights on, to pray your dad doesn't get sick because you can't afford to fix him. You don't know that kind of fear." His voice was soft. "You're right. I don't. But I know what it's like to lose everyone and realize money couldn't buy them back. She stopped at the door, her throat tight. He added quietly, I'm not saving him to make myself feel better. I'm doing it because someone once told me, kindness doesn't need to be earned. The memory of her mother's words hit her like a wave. She left without answering. That night, she sat by her father's hospital bed, the steady beep of the monitor filling the silence. He looked peaceful, color returning to his face. She should have been grateful, but all she felt was conflicted. Her dad stirred, eyes fluttering open. You've been crying. She laughed weakly. When am I not? He smiled faintly. You did what you had to, huh? Maya took his hand. I don't know if I did the right thing. He squeezed her fingers. Right thing? Wrong thing. It's all the same if it's done out of love. She pressed her forehead to his hand, tears spilling freely. And in that quiet hospital room, she realized love was the only debt no one could ever repay. For a few blessed weeks, things almost felt normal again. Daniel was responding well to the treatment. The color had returned to his cheeks, and he even cracked jokes with the nurses. Maya allowed herself to breathe, to hope. But peace never lasted long in her world. One Thursday morning, Tina burst into the diner, waving her phone like a siren. Maya, have you seen this? Maya frowned, drying her hands on her apron. Seen what? Tina turned the screen toward her. There, on the newsfeed, was a headline in bold black letters. Billionaire Adrian Shaw's secret life, waitress revealed as mystery woman. Maya's stomach dropped. Below the headline was a photo, grainy but unmistakable. Her, pouring Adrian's coffee. Another of him leaving the diner in the rain. A third of them standing near the cliffs. Oh my God, Maya whispered. Tina scrolled. They're saying he was living some kind of double life, that he's been funding your dad's medical bills to cover up a scandal. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears. That's a lie. Of course it's a lie, Tina said softly, but the internet doesn't care. By noon, the diner was packed, not with regulars, but with strangers holding phones, pretending to order just so they could snap pictures of her. Every time the bell over the door rang, her heart jumped. The manager pulled her aside. Maya, we can't have this kind of attention. People are calling non-stop. Some reporters already tried to bribe the staff for interviews. So you're firing me? She asked bitterly. I'm asking you to take a break, he said, eyes darting away, until things calm down. She took off her apron and set it on the counter. They never will. Outside, the air was thick with flashes, cameras, microphones, strangers shouting her name. She pushed through the crowd, covering her face, until she made it to the alley behind the diner. Her phone buzzed. Adrian. She hesitated, then answered. What did you do? Maya, listen to me. No, you listen, she snapped. You promised this wouldn't happen. You said you were careful. I was, he said. But someone inside the company leaked it. They wanted to hurt me before the shareholders' meeting. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix my life, Adrian. He went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. I can make this right. You can't fix this with money. I wasn't talking about money. She exhaled shakily, her anger flickering into exhaustion. You need to stay away from me, from my dad, from everything. Maya, she hung up. By the time she got home, the story had spread to television. Her neighbors stared as she walked up the stairs. 2 men in suits waited by her door. Reporters, voices smooth and fake friendly. Mr. Cole, is it true you've been secretly involved with Adrian Shaw? Did your father take payments in exchange for silence? Is this relationship romantic or financial? She slammed the door in their faces. Her hands shook as she locked it. The phone rang again. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. Her father shuffled into the room, pale but alert. Maya, what's happening? She sank onto the couch beside him. They found out. He sighed, rubbing her back. Let them talk. Truth always floats, even in dirty water. She smiled weakly. You always say that. I always mean it, he replied. She looked at him, then out of the window, where the cameras still flashed in the distance. And in that moment, she realized that fame, even the accidental kind, could destroy a person faster than any lie ever could. The noise didn't stop. It grew. By morning, reporters were parked outside the apartment complex, camera lights flashing through the blinds. Maya hadn't slept. Her father's cough echoed from the bedroom, dry and sharp. She brewed coffee just to have something to do with her hands. Her phone vibrated non-stop. Calls, texts, messages from strangers. Some were supportive, most were cruel. She muted everything. When she brought tea to her father's room, the bed was empty. The cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "Dad?" The bathroom was empty. The front door was cracked open. Cold air poured in. Her pulse spiked. She ran into the hallway, calling his name. "Dad! Dad!" Neighbors peeked from their doors, whispering. One pointed down the stairwell. "I saw him heading toward the harbor about 20 minutes ago." Maya grabbed her coat and bolted. The air outside was freezing, the kind of cold that bit through clothes. Her breath came in clouds as she sprinted down the street, her shoes slapping wet pavement. By the time she reached the docks, fog had swallowed the harbor. Boats bobbed silently, ropes creaking. No sign of him. Then she saw a familiar black car parked near the pier. The back door opened, and Adrian stepped out. "Maya?" She didn't even ask how he knew to come. "He's gone, Adrian. My dad's gone." He looked around, eyes sharp. "Which way?" "I don't know, he just left. He's sick, he's confused." "Okay," he said quickly, pulling his phone from his pocket. "I'll get my security team to help search. We'll find him." "I don't need your damn team. I need my father." "I'm trying to help," he said, his voice steady. "You want to yell at me, or find him?" That shut her up. Within minutes, a group of men in dark coats arrived, Adrian's private staff. They spread out across the docks, flashlights cutting through the fog. Maya and Adrian searched the boardwalk together. She called out until her voice cracked. "Dad! Please!" The tide crashed against the rocks below. Every shadow looked like a person, every sound like footsteps. An hour passed. Nothing. Maya leaned against a lamppost, her breath trembling. "What if he fell?" Adrian placed a hand on her shoulder. "He didn't. You don't know that. I know your father's tougher than he looks." Before she could respond, a voice called from the distance. "Over here!" They ran toward it. Down the rocky path near the lighthouse, a figure lay slumped against the railing. Daniel. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow but steady. "Dad!" Maya dropped to her knees, cradling his head. "What were you thinking?" He blinked slowly, looking at her through foggy eyes. "Didn't want to bring shame to you, sweetheart." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You could have died." He gave a faint smile. "Would have saved the news a headline." "Don't joke about that," she whispered. Adrian crouched beside them. "We need to get him to a hospital." Daniel's hand twitched, reaching for him. You found us." Adrian nodded. "You're safe now, Mr. Cole." Daniel's grip tightened weakly. "Your father, he wasn't a bad man. Just lost." Adrian's jaw clenched. "I know." Paramedics arrived, loading Daniel onto a stretcher. Maya climbed into the ambulance with him, her hand never leaving his. Adrian stood outside in the fog, watching as the red lights faded down the road. He'd found them, but something in his face said he knew this wasn't over, because saving her father's life again wasn't redemption. It was just the beginning of another loss waiting to happen. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and heartbreak. Maya sat by her father's bed, her hands wrapped around his, afraid to let go. Machines beeped steadily, each sound reminding her that he was still here. Barely. Daniel had been unconscious for most of the night. The doctors said exhaustion and stress had triggered a collapse. But it was the infection they were worried about now. His body was tired, fighting too many battles at once. Maya hadn't slept in 30 hours. Her hair was tied in a messy knot, her clothes still damp from the fog. Adrian had been in the hallway all night, pacing quietly, refusing to leave even when she told him to. When Daniel finally stirred, Maya nearly dropped the cup of water she was holding. "Dad?" His eyes fluttered open, cloudy but aware. He gave a small smile. "Still bossing people around, huh?" She laughed through her tears. "You scared me half to death." "Wouldn't be the first time," he said weakly. She brushed his hair back, trying to keep her voice steady. "You can't keep doing that to me." He squeezed her hand. "You got your mother's stubborn streak. Guess I deserve it." There was a knock on the door. Adrian stepped inside, his voice quiet. "Hey, Mr. Cole. Good to see you awake." Daniel's eyes narrowed, studying him. "You again." Adrian didn't flinch. "Yeah, me again." For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of the machines filled the silence. Then Daniel gestured weakly. "Close the door, son. We need to talk." Maya frowned. "Dad." "It's okay," he said softly. "Let me." She hesitated, then stepped back. Adrian closed the door and moved closer to the bed. Daniel's voice was faint but firm. "I remember you. Not from the diner, from years ago. Your father came to our house once." Adrian nodded. "He did. To offer money after the accident." Daniel coughed, wincing. "Your old man thought everything had a price." "I'm not him," Adrian said quietly. Daniel's gaze softened slightly. "No, you're not. You've got his eyes, though. Same guilt behind them." Adrian swallowed hard. "He died thinking he could fix what he broke. I've been trying not to make the same mistake." "You're failing," Daniel said bluntly. Maya looked between them, confused. "What are you two talking about?" Daniel turned to her, his eyes full of regret. "Your mother didn't just save his father that night, sweetheart. She covered for me, too." "What do you mean?" "I was the one driving," he said. "I was the one who caused the crash." Maya's heart stopped. "No, you weren't," he nodded. "We'd both had a drink. I took the wheel anyway. The truck came out of nowhere. Your mom made me switch seats before the cops showed up. She said, 'Let them blame me. They'll forgive a nurse faster than a drunk teacher.'" Maya's voice broke. "You let her take the blame?" Tears filled his eyes. "I thought it was just for that night. I didn't know it would follow her forever." Adrian stood frozen, his face pale. "That means—" Daniel nodded slowly. "Your father wasn't drunk that night, Adrian." "I was." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Maya covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Adrian looked like the ground had been pulled from under him. "All this time I hated him. For nothing." Daniel's hand trembled as he reached out. "Your father wasn't a saint, son, but he didn't deserve the weight I gave him. I'm sorry." Adrian bowed his head, voice cracking. "So am I." Daniel's breathing grew shallow. He looked at Maya, whispering, "He's a good man, honey. Don't waste the second chance I never had." The heart monitor beeped steadily, slower now. Maya gripped his hand. "Dad, please," he smiled faintly. "Don't cry, kiddo. You look like your mom when you do." Then his eyes closed, the machine flatlining into a single, endless tone. And in that moment, the truth came at a cost none of them were ready to pay. The funeral was small, quiet, just the way Daniel would have wanted. The harbor wind was cold that morning, lifting the corners of the black canopy set over his grave. Maya stood in silence, hands clasped, her heart feeling too heavy for her chest. She had buried her mother 15 years ago. She thought she knew what grief felt like. But this was different. This was loneliness wearing her father's voice. Tina stood beside her, holding a trembling umbrella. "You don't have to be strong right now," she whispered. Maya's eyes stayed fixed on the coffin. "If I stop being strong, I don't know what's left." The priest's words drifted in and out. A good man, a teacher, a father who loved deeply. Maya barely heard them. Adrian was there too, standing a few rows back, far enough to give her space, but close enough that she could feel his presence. He wasn't wearing his expensive suits, just a black coat and a face carved by guilt. When the service ended, people offered the usual condolences. "He's in a better place. He'd be proud of you." She nodded politely, but her heart wasn't listening. When everyone had gone, she finally turned toward Adrian. "You shouldn't have come." "I had to," he said softly. "He mattered to me too." She stared at him for a long moment, her voice shaking. "You both carried the same lie for years, and now neither of you can fix it." He looked away. "I know. What am I supposed to do with that?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Live. Because he wanted you to." Her throat tightened. "You sound just like him." He gave a sad smile. "Then maybe I'm finally saying something right." For a moment, they just stood there in the wind, the waves crashing softly behind the graveyard. Then he slipped an envelope into her hand. "What's this?" "A letter. He left it with his lawyer before the hospital. He wanted you to have it today." Her eyes widened. "You knew? I was supposed to deliver it." She hesitated, then took the envelope. The handwriting on the front was her father's, shaky, uneven, but unmistakable. Later that night, back in her apartment, she sat on the edge of her bed, the unopened letter in her lap. The apartment felt empty now, too quiet. The tin box of notes sat on the dresser, untouched since the night of the confession. Finally, she tore the envelope open. "My Maya," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I've gone where your mum's been waiting. Don't cry too long, kiddo. I had a good life because I got to raise you. I know I made mistakes, some you'll never understand. But I hope one day you'll forgive me." Her tears fell onto the page, blurring the ink. "There's something else you should know. The diner. It's yours. I sold the land years ago, but Adrian helped me buy it back. He told me he wanted to build something with you, not for you. Maybe you can turn it into something new, something good." Maya covered her mouth, her sobs quiet but uncontainable. She unfolded the second sheet. It wasn't her father's handwriting this time. It was Adrian's. "He asked me to make sure his wish came true. The deed is signed in your name. No more notes, no more secrets. Just a promise. I'll honor him by helping you, if you'll let me." There was no signature, just his initials, A.S. Maya sat there for a long time, the papers shaking in her hands. Her father was gone, but he'd somehow managed to tie her fate to the one man she didn't know how to forgive, or stop missing. Spring came early that year. The snow melted off the harbor roofs, gulls returned to the docks, and sunlight crept back into places that hadn't seen warmth in months. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt something close to peace. It had been 3 months since the funeral. 3 months since she opened her father's letter and learned that the diner, the one place that had carried her family through every hardship, was hers. She renamed it Daniel's Place. The first morning it reopened, the air inside smelled of fresh paint and cinnamon. The old red booths had been reupholstered, the windows scrubbed until the harbor glimmered through the glass. She'd kept her father's favorite chair near the window and framed a photo of him and her mother above the register. Tina walked in, carrying a box of pastries. "You did it, kid," she said, setting them down. "He'd be proud." Maya smiled faintly. "He'd complain about the prices first." "Probably," Tina said, laughing. "But then he'd order pie anyway." Customers trickled in, locals, fishermen, tourists who'd read about the waitress who inherited her dad's diner from a billionaire benefactor. The story had died down, but the curiosity never really left. Still, Maya didn't mind anymore. For the first time, the whispers didn't sting. She'd created something new here. Every Sunday, she served free meals to families who couldn't afford one. A chalkboard by the door read, "Pay what you can, eat anyway." It started small, a few regulars, a couple of single parents, but within weeks, the place was full every Sunday morning. People left folded notes on the counter to say thank you. Some slipped in cash, others left words, kind words, hopeful ones. The first time Maya opened the box of notes at home, her hands shook. They reminded her of the ones Adrian used to leave, those small pieces of light she'd once thought were just paper. Tina called it the kindness jar. Maya called it continuing the conversation. Sometimes, when she closed the diner late at night, she'd catch herself glancing toward the corner booth, the one Adrian always sat in. It stayed empty now. No fresh notes, no folded napkins, just quiet. She missed him more than she wanted to admit. He hadn't come back after the funeral. Not once. No calls, no letters, not even a message through his assistant. It was like he'd disappeared completely, leaving her with the diner and a handful of unfinished feelings. But she couldn't be angry. He'd done what he promised. He'd helped her father, given her a future, and then left her free to live it. Still, some nights she'd sit by the window and talk to the dark like he was out there listening. "Guess you got what you wanted, huh?" she'd whisper. "A clean slate." The wind off the harbor would carry her words away, leaving only the sound of waves and faint laughter from the late-night docks. One Sunday morning, as she wiped the counter, a little girl handed her a napkin folded neatly in half. "This fell out of my mom's purse," the girl said. "I think it's for you." Maya smiled and took it. "Thanks, sweetheart." When the girl left, Maya unfolded the napkin and froze. It wasn't new. It was old, yellowed at the edges. The handwriting was careful, elegant, unmistakable. "Keep believing. The sun rises for you too." Her heart stopped. The very first note. She looked toward the door, but the girl was gone. And for the first time in months, Maya felt that familiar spark. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, someone out there hadn't truly left. The napkin note didn't leave Maya's mind for days. She'd tucked it under the register at Daniel's place, right beside the framed picture of her parents. Every time she looked at it, she felt that same ache, the strange mix of hope and longing she'd tried so hard to bury. Adrian Shaw, the man who had written those words, changed her life, and then vanished like morning fog. She told herself it didn't matter anymore. She had the diner. She had her father's legacy. She was fine. But fine didn't fill the quiet at night. Fine didn't answer the question of why he had disappeared without a goodbye. Then, on the 1-year anniversary of the diner's reopening, a courier arrived just after dawn. He wore a dark coat and carried a single envelope sealed in black wax. "Delivery for Miss Maya Cole," he said. She frowned. "From who?" The man smiled faintly. "No sender listed. Just said you'd know." Her pulse quickened. She thanked him, shut the door, and turned the envelope over in her hands. There was no address, no logo. Just her name in careful, deliberate handwriting. His handwriting. Inside was a letter and a plane ticket. Destination, Bar Harbor, Maine. Departure, tomorrow at sunrise. The letter read, "One last sunrise. If you come, follow the coordinates below. If not, keep the diner and forget the man who made too many mistakes. Either way, you'll always have the words I never said. A." Her hands trembled as she traced the map printed at the bottom. It led to a cliff overlooking the ocean, a place she'd driven by 1,000 times, but never stopped to see. Tina noticed the letter when she came in later that morning. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Maybe I have." Tina leaned on the counter, reading the ticket. "You're not actually thinking of going, are you?" Maya folded the letter carefully. "I don't know." "He broke your heart, kid." Maya sighed. "Yeah, but he also put it back together." Tina shook her head. You're too soft for your own good. Or maybe I just don't like leaving stories unfinished, Maya said quietly. That night, she closed the diner early. The harbor was calm, the air heavy with the smell of salt and spring rain. She sat on her father's old chair by the window, turning the ticket over and over in her hands. Finally, she whispered, "Okay, Adrian. One last sunrise." The next morning, she drove before dawn. The road wound through pine trees and wildflowers, the horizon bleeding pink and gold. The closer she got, the faster her heart beat. When she reached the cliffs, the ocean stretched endlessly before her, glowing in the first light of morning. And standing near the edge, dressed in a simple coat, was Adrian Shaw. He turned as she approached, his smile small, hesitant. "You came." "Of course I did," she said. "You're terrible at goodbyes." He laughed softly, a sound she hadn't realized she missed. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me again." "I didn't know if I did either," she admitted. "But you left a note. You always leave notes." "I ran out of them for a while," he said, eyes meeting hers. "Didn't think I had the right to write any more." Maya took a step closer. "You could have written anyway." The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of the sea and the sound of gulls. Adrian's voice softened. "I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness." "I know," she said. "You came to say goodbye." He nodded slowly. "For real this time." And as the sun rose behind them, painting the water gold, she realized goodbye didn't always mean the end. Sometimes it meant finally being able to start again. Part 19. The Final Revelation. Word count, 603 words. The wind at the cliff was cold, carrying the sharp tang of salt and memory. Adrian stood with his hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the endless horizon. Maya walked closer until she was standing beside him, close enough to feel the warmth of his shoulder through her jacket. For a while, neither of them spoke. The ocean didn't need words. It said everything in the sound of its waves. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "So this is where you've been hiding." He smiled faintly. "Not hiding. Building." "Building what?" He took a deep breath and nodded toward the small town below the cliffs. "See those rooftops? That used to be the old fishing village. We've been turning it into something new. Schools, clinics, housing for single parents, and kids who aged out of foster care." She followed his gaze. A cluster of newly painted buildings shimmered in the morning light. A construction crew moved like ants below, unloading supplies. On the largest building, a banner read, "The Laura Munro Foundation." Maya's chest tightened. "You used my mother's name?" He nodded. "It felt right. Your mother saved my father's life. Your father saved mine. I thought it was time to return the favor. To both of them." Her throat went dry. "You did all this for them?" "For them," he said softly, "and for you. Because the world doesn't need more billionaires pretending to care. It needs people who actually do." She turned to him. "You really gave it all up, didn't you?" He chuckled quietly. "The board forced me out anyway. I figured I might as well make it official. Sold my shares. Liquidated my assets. I'm not Mr. Shaw, CEO anymore. Just Adrian." "You walked away from everything?" He nodded, eyes still on the sea. "Money was never the problem. It was what it turned people into. I spent years thinking power could undo guilt. Turns out, the only thing that really fixes anything is doing something good without expecting applause." She laughed softly. "Sounds like something my dad would have said." "Then maybe I finally learned from the right people." For the first time, Maya noticed he looked different, lighter somehow. The lines around his eyes had softened. He didn't look like a man haunted by ghosts anymore. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I wasn't sure when to give you this." She unfolded it slowly. It wasn't a note this time. It was a photograph. A picture of her standing outside Daniel's place, laughing with a customer, sunlight catching in her hair. "When did you take this?" she asked. "The day I realized you didn't need saving," he said. You were already doing what I was too afraid to do, living honestly. Maya looked at the photo, then back at him. You still could, you know. Live honestly. He smiled. That's why I asked you here. What do you mean? He hesitated, then handed her a folder. Inside was a partnership document for the Laura Monroe Foundation. Her name was listed as co-director. I want you to run it with me, he said. It should belong to the people it was built for. She blinked, stunned. You're serious. As serious as I've ever been. Maya's hands trembled as she closed the folder. You know, I spent so long wondering why you disappeared. I thought maybe you regretted everything. I did, he admitted. But disappearing was the only way to become someone worth coming back as. The sun rose higher, casting gold across the water. Maya smiled through her tears. You always had a way with words. Adrian's voice softened. You were the first person who ever made me mean them. And in that quiet, perfect moment, they both understood that redemption wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about finally earning tomorrow. Part 20. The Sunrise Promise. Word count. 4 words. The next morning, the sea was calm, smooth as glass under a sky streaked with gold and pale pink. Maya stood barefoot on the cliff, the wind tugging at her hair, her father's urn cradled in her arms. Adrian stood beside her, silent. He'd brought no cameras, no fanfare, just flowers from the diner's windowsill, wild daisies, her father's favorite. This feels right, she said quietly. He nodded. He'd like this view. She smiled faintly. He always said the horizon looked like a promise. They stood together as she opened the urn. The ashes caught the wind and scattered, glimmering for a moment, before vanishing into the sunlight. Maya whispered, You're home now, Dad. For a while, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the distant rhythm of waves and the cry of gulls overhead. Then Adrian said softly, You know, I used to think sunrises were overrated. Too early, too quiet. And now? She asked. He looked at her. Now I get why people chase them. They're proof something new is always coming. She smiled. That sounds like one of your notes. Maybe I've still got a few left in me. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. She hesitated, then opened it. It wasn't a message this time. It was a drawing. A small sketch of Daniel's place, surrounded by little hearts and flowers, drawn in crayon. At the bottom, a child's messy handwriting read, Thank you for feeding my family. Maya's throat tightened. Where did you get this? One of the kids from the foundation drew it. Said her mom takes her there every Sunday. Thought you should have it. Maya's eyes shimmered with tears. They didn't have to. They wanted to, he said softly. That's what kindness does. It echoes. She folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into her coat. You did good, Adrian. He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. Took me long enough. When she looked at him again, his face was open, peaceful in a way she'd never seen before. What happens now? She asked. I was hoping we'd figure that out together, he said. She tilted her head, smiling. Together how? He shrugged, eyes crinkling at the corners. However you'll let her. Partner, friend, co-founder. Someone who brings you coffee that's always a little too strong. She laughed. You still can't make coffee, huh? Terrible at it, he admitted. The sunlight broke fully over the horizon then, spilling warmth over the cliff and the water below. Maya turned toward it, closing her eyes for a moment. She felt her father there somehow, in the breeze, in the glow, in the peace she finally understood. She whispered, You were right, Dad. The horizon really is a promise. Adrian reached for her hand. His fingers laced gently through hers. She didn't pull away. They stood that way for a long time, the waves whispering against the rocks below, the gulls circling lazily overhead. After a while, Maya said, You know, I used to think life was just surviving one bad day after another. And now? He asked. She smiled, eyes on the endless gold of the sea. Now I think it's about learning to see the light that keeps showing up anyway. Adrian's voice was barely a whisper. That's the best note I've ever heard. She turned to him, smiling through tears. You're not the only one who can write. They laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that carried peace instead of pain. As they walked down toward the pier, the sun rising behind them, a single napkin fluttered loose from Maya's coat pocket, caught by the wind. It landed on the diner's old counter miles away, the words faint but still visible. Keep believing. The sun rises for you too. And for once, it finally had. So no, that's how our story comes to an end. You're still here, aren't you? That means something in this story has reached you in a way words alone can't explain. Maybe it's about forgiveness. Maybe it's about letting go. Or maybe, just maybe, it's about finding peace in places that once hurt. Maya's journey reminds us that healing isn't about erasing pain. It's about learning to grow around it. Like the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. We don't control the storms, but we can choose who we become after they pass. Adrian learned that redemption doesn't come from wealth or guilt. It comes from courage, from doing good quietly. And Maya discovered that strength isn't loud. It's gentle. It's showing up again, even when your heart still trembles. If you're watching this right now, maybe life's been hard on you too. But remember, every sunrise is a promise, and every ending is just a new beginning wearing a disguise. If this story touched you even a little, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a reminder to keep believing, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got more stories waiting to find you.